shaky around the giddles, but that's what happens. So, the usual 15 minutes late, but that's fairly standard, actually. That's fairly standard. Right, let's wait for some people to arrive. I hope I'm on the right channel. I think so. Come on, Rosie. Gorgeous day here. Ah, good. Dee, Julie, we've got some people here. Excellent. Always worried that whether I'm actually streaming onto the right page or not. Gina, happy birthday, girl. -1 day. 21 again. Ah, excellent. Lots of people coming. This is good. This is good. It's absolutely beautiful. In fact, I might open the blind, you know. I might go mad and open the blind because I'm not sat near it today. Let's do that. I've also got, oh, where's the blind hanger? I'm still here. I'm still here. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm here. I'm here. You'll be delighted to know I'm here. Excuse-moi. Still coughing. Still coughing, but taking no notice. Wow! Oh, yeah, there's a wrong way to pull a blind. I'll hit it. There we go. We'll get that. Oh, and that's useful. That's a bit of paper as well. Probably need one of those as well. There we are. Fully prepared now. Morning. Morning, morning, morning. Wow, there's loads of you arrived while I was just over there. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Just thinking, does it look particularly... It doesn't look very good behind me, does it? But it doesn't look too bad either. It doesn't look too bad. Gosh, ready for that tea. Lovely. Hi, Anne, Sidella, Maria, Jackie, loads and those. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Right. Quite exciting, actually. We're getting on to, well, all aspects have been exciting so far. Where are my blocks? I just got everything ready. I just got it. Hang on. Let's just have a look in this, rumble in this little pile. Here we go. So, if you remember, just tip you down. You're there for now, and then I'm going to move you around next to me when I start machining so that you can actually see the machine instead of me. But I'll keep you there for the moment. Hi, Jill. Sue, Gemma, hi. Hi, Zoe. Hi, Leslie. Yes, I am. This is the same room. There's, what I could do one week, actually, is... show you around the room, because I've already thought we can have some streams. I mean, the weather's so beautiful. I was thinking we can have some streams where we go out in the garden and do a bit of pilfering of leaves and stiff. Hi, Maria. No question mark needed there, Morag. It is morning, and I am Hillary, definitely. I love that. I love it when people put in the wrong exclamation, the wrong punctuation marks. I do it so. And the emojis. I love a good wrong emoji. I love it when I look at a stream afterwards and somebody's hit the angry face, and I think, oh, what did I do there? That's one of that. Sabina won't be watching yet because she won't be up in Canada. They'll still be in bed there. But Sabina may well watch this back. And when you do, Sabina, you often leave me angry faces by accident. I think you think they're smiling and happy. So that always makes me smile. I love a bit of wrong punctuation, wrong emoji. Yes, happy Easter, everybody. Happy Easter. Oh, good. I'm glad, Susan. I'm enjoying doing them, actually. It's really nice to kind of just take some time to do some gentle homemaking sort of projects, or just gentle projects, rather than kind of, most of what I do is either geared towards an exhibition deadline or geared towards teaching. So it's rather nice to actually do some things that are just gentle and kind of still making it up as I go along, because that's how I work, but just making some nice things, and I'm really pleased with how this is going. So yeah, I thought it might be quite nice, actually. I could show you on one of the streams just around the studio that we're working in, so you know. I might clean it first. I might just clean it up a bit first. It's not very nice at the moment, and show you around so that you understand where you're looking at me from. So at the moment, I'm sat here. Behind me is the aircon unit, so it's a disaster seat if it's cold, because you just get hot air blowing on you. Lovely in the summer because I can have cold air blowing on me. Sink's over there, and all this will be reversed because you're being mirrored. Sink's over there, and then where I normally paint and stream when I'm painting is over there. So at the moment I've got 2 tables up high over there for working on high, this table down low for machining, and behind me over here, this is where we very nearly got the decorating done just before COVID hit. So we weren't having decorating in here, but here was where everything was going to Oh, hi, Sidella. Yes, over from Dublin. I recognised your name. I thought I got one of my Irish girls there. We were about to get the sitting room floor and the study floor stripped, waxed and polished, and 2 shower rooms and the utility room and the laundry room all sorted out, literally. So everything was getting put in here. So I'd started shoveling away stuff in that corner, and then COVID hit. So that didn't happen. So we're kind of, half the house is put away at the moment. We're in a bit of a strange place, but never mind. That's okay. So we could do that, and I thought it'd be nice to do some streams, because I can take the camera outside, where we go and have a look around the garden. And, you know, this is jelly plate and leaf snitching time. One of the best ones, because they're all just coming out. So we can enjoy all sorts of different things, because I think with this project that we're doing, it's going to take me quite a while to finish mine, because I'm doing it in some, I'm stitching it quite heavily. You don't have to do it like that. I know Jill has already pieced up a whole top, just while we were all probably sleeping. It's the kind of girl she is. But on the basis that this is going to take me a few weeks to stitch, I thought, well, what we could do is keep this one going and update on it each week, but then carry on doing some other things, just bring in some other things. I think there was a couple of comments about jelly printing would be quite good. Yeah, exactly there, Fiona, jelly printing. So I thought, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And I thought we might do a book of, I don't know, the garden, the leaves, I mean, you can do completely different for this, but I thought for me, this is a time that I think will go down, well, it's not a time that I think will go down in history. This time will go down in history. This is a historic time. We are living in history now. We are definitely living history. And I thought, oh, Saltash, you're near, oh, you have that fantastic gallery up there with, you've got old what's-her-face in there. David Hockney. Love it up there. Yeah, is Anne-Marie here already? That's very good. Hi, Anne, Henry, Anne, Christine. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I thought we could do a fabric book. Either fabric or paper, I'm not sure. Might be a bit of both. But we could look at jelly printing backgrounds for that, because it's a lovely way to make backgrounds for book pages, is jelly printing. And then we can jelly print the life out of the garden out there. And it would be a nice way of recording what's happening at the moment. That's the one, I've just taken that off. Sorry. Nilo's nicked one of my slippers this morning. Not that it really matters because it's a sunny day, but you know, it's a bit much. They were my new slipper. Yeah, you dog. He says he hasn't at all. He thinks it might have been the problem, so he's nicked it. So we could do something like that and keep a record of these times. And in mine, I think I'll probably add a little bit of journaling. Yeah, I can imagine, Gemma. Seriously, history in the making. So I think, and I'm sure a lot of people will be doing this anyway, but I think as time goes on, it will be nice to have things that are from this time that remind us. So I thought we would start a book, and for me, I'm going to record my garden. You might want to record your daily walk. You know, if you're getting out each day to get your exercise going for a walk, you might want to collect things from that and record it. You might want to record, you know, I don't know, something that's this time. So I think we could be doing that. It is, Linda. They'll have massive stories to tell, and so will we. We'll never live through something like this again. You know, it's a quite extraordinary situation. So I think doing some sort of book and journal, but we can make that an artistic one that we can put lots of lovely stitching and painting and jelly printing in, but you can also journal in as one. So that's kind of in my mind, that we could then, for the next few weeks after this week, carry on with a bit of stitching and then do a bit of collecting. You stitch a daily Gulliver. Of course you do, Judy. Of course you do. So that could be your thing. And, you know, you're in a beautiful coastal place, so you might choose to go and get, I don't know if you're allowed on the beach, actually, you might not be. Go and get a bit of seaweed, or we'll sort of see. We'll kind of let that evolve as it comes. But I am aware that we're going to need some other things to do while we're stitching this. So if we go back, let's move those. It's one of my favourite blocks, that one. I think that's so pretty with all those roses on. I hadn't intentionally put, oh, actually that one hasn't got roses. That's got dahlias, the beige one, but there's just so many rosy ones on there. It's a really rosy block. So if you remember, I had got these and I'd split them. So I'd cut that piece and that piece. And then I've reversed them. And let me tip you down a bit so you can see. Excellent. I was hoping for people that are by the beach that it would come onto their exercise routes. I'm very jealous of you because our exercise route is round the street. Not that I've dared go out and do that yet because I'm still coughing. Not as much now. I mean, I'm massively, massively better, but I am still coughing. And I think, you know, I should really just stay at home until that's finished. So, but when I do, it's around the streets here. So this is my block. I've turned those two pieces round, and then what I've done is I've taken some backing fabric. Now, I was going to use more of the fabric I had, but I didn't have enough. So I went upstairs and looked through my fabric stash and found this fabric, which is a blue one that I stenciled, a long time ago. I think it was in the first year we were here, and I was thinking of using these for the kitchen, and it's just never happened. So oh, lemon drizzles in the oven. How very nice. Right, well then, there we are, Karen. That's the thing to do. We'll journal and scrapbook, and we'll just spend some time each week looking at different ways we can put things in. We can look at printing, stenciling, stamping, jelly printing, journaling, colouring, all sorts of nice things. And I think that will give us something that in years to come will be really, really interesting to... this keeps coming up each morning. Hi, is your Facebook ad still available? I don't know who it's from. I think it's a spook call. So I've backed this on here. Morning, Janice. So I've used this fabric. I've cut it into 12.5-inch squares, which is the size of my ruler. And then what I've done is I've put heat and bond on this fabric. I'm just trying to see if there's a loose bit so I can show you. Now I've actually bonded them all really well, but I've put heat and bond onto this backing piece as well. And then I was able to put, if you look here, let's just lift that bit up. So there's the heat and bond. It's had felt ironed on it. On the back of that, and then I basically just lined my top pieces up. Let's iron this back down. Handily enough, there is an iron right by my nose, so that's good news. That's very good news. So let's just plug that in there. Okay, so I've just lined them up on top of this piece, and of course I can use what I've done is I've lined this fabric top with that fabric back near enough. Now, this is all going to get trimmed at the end. Remember, for mine, because I'm making mine as I go along, I can trim these blocks to any size I want. I haven't pre-planned this quilt, so I don't have measurements I need to stick to. These blocks could be 6 inches big, 8 inches big, 12.5 inches big, 2 inches big, 3.6 inches big, 26 centimetres plus an inch big. They could be anything I want. They don't even have to be square. Square makes it easy to put this together. So if that's heated up, which it has, so all I'm doing is butting up again those two edges where they're going to meet, and basically sticking that, using the heat and bond to stick that down. Now when you go from the front, it would help if I had my iron hot. When you go from the front, you'll get some sort of adhesion, but not a full one, but enough to hold it. Then turn your block over and hit it from the back. Now I can see mine hasn't held there, which is my own fault for pulling something apart, but then hit it from the back, and you should get a really good bond. That'll stick itself down. So I've basically glued each square together like that. Let's just unplug the iron. I do not need that heat. So it's all, I knew that wasn't going to. It's not very happy about me having reheated it there. I'll just put a hand on it for a minute and hold it. It'll go down with the machine. We'll machine this one so we get it held. So each block now is stuck down onto its backing, and it basically needs these seams where we butted things up all want sticking, well, they're all stuck, they all want catching really firmly. So what I've been doing, and I'll show you, is the other thing I thought we should do, I've got a big pile of scraps left from this, and I definitely think we should do a project with some of the scraps, just because whatever room this goes in, those scraps are going to go with it, you know. So I thought we could make a cushion or something, and I also thought we could make just a little piece of nice gentle artwork for the wall, which will probably have a cactus. Well, actually, it should have a rose or a dahlia on, shouldn't it? Because those are my motifs on here. So maybe I'll make a piece with a rose on. We'll see. But I thought that would be quite nice too. So what I've done is I've used, it's like a two-sided blanket stitch. It's one of the stitches on my machine. Can you see that? And because it goes both ways across that seam, I'm trying to see if there's a lighter seam. Yes, there is. That's an easier one to show you. There. Because it goes both ways, it's actually holding that seam really, really, really tight. And because I'm working with the, oh, that'll need to come out. Because I'm going to work with the back is going to be the back, I've actually for once made sure that my tension is right so that the back is also going to look neat. So let's just look at doing that first, and then I'll show you how I've been actually quilting them. So let's just stitch some together, and then we'll look at actually putting some quilting, or in my case, it's not quilting, it's machine embroidery patterns on them. So let's just move those. I'll come back to those in a minute. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Cough, 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 cough. Hi, Ammo. Right, here. Oh, look, how handy. It's no wonder I can't find them anywhere else, is it? Look, 3 pairs of scissors. So I'm going to move the camera now, just round to here. Move those over there. Making a good pile. I'm going to move you round to here, because I think it'll be easier for you to see the machine. So you're going around. While you're here, I won't be able to see your comments, but you can chat to each other and I'll catch them when I come back. So I think, whoa, just trying to chuck you off the thing. We'll put that there. Shuffle you up here. And that's pretty good, isn't it? You can see that machine. Okay, so I've got my machine. Let's just change the foot. Let's change the foot because I've got the free motion foot on there because that's what I'm nearly always using. Is what I want on is either just an ordinary foot, or if you've got one, I'm going to use a walking foot. Now on this machine, it has a built-in feed, which is the same as having a walking foot. A lot of machines, some machines have that, some machines have a separate walking foot. If you haven't got a walking foot, don't worry too much because we're only on felt here, so you're not going to get a lot of movement here. So I'm putting that foot on. I'll just get a screwdriver and give it a little tweak so it's nice and tight. I did it the other day. The foot was nearly falling off. And then with this foot, you put that foot on, and then there is a feed at the back here. Where's my T? Oh, there we are. This bit that comes down, clips under that foot and makes that so that it's a dual feed foot. And what that does, just to explain that, is it basically, just let me get the feed dogs up. There we go. When fabric is feeding normally, there's feed dogs at the bottom which have little serrated bits on it, and what they do is they chunter over these cogs and the fabric is fed through. The top is just smooth. That means that if you've got a thick material, if you imagine a thick collection of materials, if you've got thick wadding, what can happen is that the bottom is being fed by cogs, the top is just sliding, and you can get a bit of lack of synchronization between those. And you end up with the one part going at more faster or slower. I know, I hadn't either, Dee. It was so exciting. I thought, flipping heck, I'm doing proper quilting here. I'm putting on a dual feed foot. I know, I felt crap. It was like going back years, and my head was kind of, oh, hang on a minute, this is that's what you do, isn't it? So that can happen, and if you've ever done that, what happens is you're stitching away happily on the front, and then you get this creeping and moving because the two fabrics just aren't staying even. So what this walking foot does is it actually puts a serrated element to the top as well, so that those two cogs are turning together, both top and bottom, and feeding that fabric nice and evenly. Now, as I say, because my blocks are very slim, I doubt I actually need it, but as it's on here, I might as well use it. So walking foot on if you have one. If not, the foot I would use normally for sewing when I'm not free motioning, my favourite one is either just your normal one, but I like this one, which is the open applique foot, because I can really see what I'm stitching there. I just like that one. You may prefer this, which is this is a standard foot, which has the mark in the middle for you to go down. I just quite like being able to see my stitches, but choose whatever suits you best. So let's thread this up. I've chosen a blue thread, which I'm going to use on all the blocks. It's a blue that kind of matches with the blues that I have. Oh, hang on. Don't stop messing me around. There we go. It matches with the blues I have, and looks really good. I'm sure I'll have more of it. It's handy because it's one of my favourite threads, so I have it about 10 times over. It's this one, this colour, this one of Inktense 951, which is a nice mid blue with a slight variegation. Let me see if I can find one out of a wrapper. I'd be amazed if I can't, because I know I keep buying it. There's another one. Oh no, that's 904. That's slightly brighter. No, that's not it. Classically, I can't. Still, that was just an aside. There's another one, 951. I've got it loads of times. What's that? 951. There's another one. So it's this kind of nice mid blue, and if you look at my blocks, this is a blue block. It kind of goes with all of them. Now, when I looked at my blocks, and you can do this any way you want, the easiest way to do your backing is to have it the same fabric on all of them. You don't need to worry about this. I didn't have enough of any one. I had this one that was very densely printed and this one that was lighter printed. So what I've done is I've split my blocks, and they handily split into 6 that had green elements in them and 6 that didn't. So I've backed the ones that haven't with one type of fabric and the ones that have with another type, on the basis that when I put this together, I will remember to alternate one without, one with, one without, one with. That will mean the back, if this makes sense, will make a checkerboard of these blues, 2 different blues. So the easiest way by far, and if I'd had time to dye another piece of fabric, I would have done, but I wanted to be at this stage for today, would be to just have the same fabric all over your back. If you're going to have different fabrics, just think a little bit about how they're going to work when you put I could lay this out and plan these blocks, and that's almost certainly what somebody organised would do. I haven't, because the truth is I can't be bothered. It means finding a big space and laying them out, and then I'd have to number them, then I have to remember them, and I know with me the odds are very high that even having done all of that, I'll put them together wrong. So I've just worked on a very simple system here. So this blue, which I've now put down, is kind of in the mid-tones of these blues. So it shows on some blocks and doesn't on the other, and that's fine with me. So I'm going to stitch everything with that blue. So let's stitch one of these green ones and just show you. Now, I did carefully write down, and of course have lost, what stitch I was doing. So I'll keep that. Let me find something plain to stitch on for you so that I can just show you decorative stitches and the kind that you want. Something plain, not an easy ask in this room. Something plain that now I have got loads of stitch samples somewhere. I just don't actually know where they all are. Bear with. Come on. Oh, that'll do, look. Whoa, that's a box of dies. That's a big piece of felt. That'll do. You'll do nicely. Piece of felt. So do, it's white felt, so you'll be able to see. If you're familiar with using the decorative stitches on your machine, just choose one and you're off and going. But what you're looking for, if you imagine we've got the butt of the 2 fabrics is here, so that's where they join. So we've got one fabric here, one fabric here. We need a stitch that goes on both sides of that line. That's the easiest way of stitching this. Otherwise, if you do one that only goes on one side of the line, you're going to have to do it twice to hold both fabrics. Now, you may have a machine that doesn't have something that goes on both sides of the line, in which case choose something like a blanket stitch or a fly stitch and just go down one side, reverse and go back up the other. You do need something, you're going to need a machine with a zigzag. The simplest way of doing this would be a triple stitch, which virtually all machines have. on their basic stitches. On mine, it's in the basic set on the front of the screen here. All the decorative stitches are listed up here and go in these modes that I change here. But the basic stitches, so my straight stitches, zigzag, buttonholes, ender seams are all here. And that one is triple stitch. And all triple stitch does is it basically makes that sort of stitch across your seam. So let me show you triple stitch. And triple stitch more or less disappears really. So this is triple stitch. I should have brought up the bottom thread because I have no idea where it is from last time I was stitching. Oh, and that's another thing to mention is I have actually got a matching thread in my bobbin. Normally, I just stitch with grey in the bobbin, but I've actually put this colour into my bobbin, which is again a mid blue, so that the stitching, because I know the stitching on the back is going to show. Normally the back of my pieces of work don't show at all. In this case, I know it is going to show, so I needed a matching colour. So a basic triple stitch would be like this, and it just goes from one side to the other. It looks like zigzag. It looks like zigzag, but it isn't zigzag because this isn't one big stitch. This is 3 stitches, so it makes a very, very tight seam. If I get my 2 bits of felt, so let's butt those up together as if we were joining this. Let's put those together, get that butted up, and hold them together and basically run down with triple stitch. Even though my felt's stretchy, that makes, look how strong that is. I'm pulling that. That is a really strong seam. And that is actually the stitch that we're almost certainly going, well, we might use to join, to make the quilt at the end, to actually join the blocks at the end. Triple stitch is what I have in mind, or I may use the decorative stitch actually that I've been using throughout the blocks. So that's triple stitch. Just about any machine will have it. Look in your manual if you don't know which one it is. It is very strong. It would work beautifully. But there are also other decorative stitches which go either side of a line. So if we put a line on again, let's imagine that's our line. When I look at my stitches, I can see fairly easily which are going over the line. So there's lots of candidates actually, but the ones I was looking at were, just try some of these out. I mean, I've got 66, so I need to go into mode 2. Oh, that's interesting, that's mode 3. I was going to say, that's not what I'm expecting to see. That is. This stitch is like a double-sided blanket stitch. So it just goes either side of the line, making a blanket stitch, and I can alter the settings on it. So at the moment, it's on a width 5, length 2.5. Let's say I wanted to move those a bit closer together to make the seam a bit stronger. I can make it width 5, length 1.5, and that will put the little blanket stitches closer together. I can increase the width if I want it to go further onto each piece of fabric. If I had any fraying or anything like that I was bothering about, I might do that. And I can increase the length back, and that's the widest and furthest apart I can get it. So have a little play on something to see which of your stitches work. Yep, it is good fun. This is a nice chance to actually use these. So there's blanket stitch as it starts. That's its default setting. That's making it much closer together, which will make that stronger, and then that's widening it and then putting it on a wide normal setting. So try out some of your stitches. Another nice one that most machines will have is fly stitch. This is fly stitch. It's like feather stitch that you do by hand, and again I can close it up a bit. I can close it up quite a lot actually and make it really close together. I can make it wider. Let's look at those. So try some out and have a look at them and see what you think. And they look very differently when you change the settings. So here's fly stitch on default, there. And then that's putting the settings really close together. And it's a completely different looking stitch, isn't it? That was just changing the setting from 2.5 to 1 length. And that makes a really closely, very, very strong bond on your stitches. So try some out. I mean, and you'll get some that are really loony, but you might want to use them. It depends on how patient you are. So if I chose something like, let's find it, for instance, let's go with 75, which is a line of hearts. This will look very, very pretty. It's just going to be very, 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 very slow to stitch all my seams like this, but it's certainly going both sides of that line, which is fine. I would just have to sit and wait for it to put in all these hearts. But that, you know, that could be an option. I could put that in as a joining stitch. And you could do different stitches on different seams. Completely up to you how you want to play this one. What is going to take you longer if you do it is if you use a stitch like, say, 35 on here. Lovely stitch. It's the blanket stitch. Very, very nice. But it only goes down one side of my line at a time. So if I was going to do that, so that would have secured 1/2. I'd have to turn it and come back the other way to secure the other half. Now, nothing wrong with that. You'll make a very nice, whoops, hang on. Let's get it back at the beginning. You'll make a very strong statement line down the middle and it will look very nice. But it's just going to take twice as long. That's all. It's going to take twice as long. So you can do that. But really, if your machine has stitches like these that do it at the same time, I think that's probably easier. And actually, you might want that really bold line. So for me, this is a joy of making a piece like this. I would rather spend my time stitching decorative stitches over these seams than piecing this, because either way, I have to stitch these seams. If I'm piecing this, I would have to stitch these, turn, fold and iron and actually piece this up. This way, I'm stitching over the top. So I'm basically stitching them. Each way requires one lot of stitching. I just prefer it with the decorative stitch. So I'm going to do mine. I had chosen, and I did write it down. You see, this was my little trial. And I've written down stitch 31. Width 5, which it is, length 0.5. So I've got it on a very close length, and that's giving me a nice stitch. So I'm looking at where my pieces are, and it makes sense to me to stitch down these seams first. I just need to stitch everywhere the fabrics join and then along the middle to tidy it up, just in case I make any blobbers, which I highly probably will. So get yourself in at the beginning. What I do when I start to see, it's such a long time since I've done anything that needs to be secure, but I really can't be bothering with trying to, I am not going to pull threads out the back and tie them. I'm just not. So all I do is I hold it stationary for a second to make it stitch on top of itself. I know that will hold, and then I let it run off. At the end of the seam, I have got a finishing button on here, which basically just makes it stitch on the spot again and finishes the seam off. So let's run down this seam and I'll show you. So when you're using the machine like this, I find the hardest thing is if you're used to free machining, to just let the machine stitch. Don't start pulling it. Let it get on with it. Just all you're doing is just guiding into that foot and making sure that the stitching goes where you want it. Don't push or pull because you'll distort the pattern stitch. And some stitches that are complicated go both backwards and forwards, and it's very easy to get mixed up and start wanting to pull and push. So I'm just going to go to the end and then press my locking button, and it will just do some stitches on the spot like that, which locks that, and then cut my threads. And we have a very nice firmly held seam. So let's do another. Let's do this block. just going to have to move myself a bit so that I can actually get at this, but I think, yeah, I think you can see, can't you? So, again, I'm just going to start and hold it in place for a minute. Just one stitch is enough. And I'm also going to stitch over this end when I go down the middle, so that will help hold it too. Have it at a speed that's comfortable for you, and just stitch down. And actually stitching these up, I've got 12 blocks. I don't know yet whether I'm going to make 9 of them up or 12 of them up. I haven't decided. So, you know, it's probably a couple of hours job to just sit and stitch these up, put the radio on, or put an Audible book on, and just sit and enjoy the process. Open the doors, open the windows, and just enjoy making something very beautiful. This is just making sure that this is going to be very secure, that these seams are going to be held really toughly, because this is going to have a lot of washing and a lot of wear this throw. So I need these held nice and securely. And to be honest, if I'd pieced this, I would still want to stitch over these seams for extra security. And you can see that on the back, well, actually on this one, you can see it looks lovely. I'm just getting like a zigzag coming down the back of these. So let's do the other sides. It's lovely to stitch on this. I'm not used to stitching through anything so lovely and easy, just nice painted and dyed fabrics and a nice piece of felt. I'm used to far more brutal stitching, so this is very lovely and gentle. So again, hold it in position and then let it go. You're unlikely to get fraying on the edges because the heat and bond will sort that out, as does the paint. Wherever there's paint, that will stop it fraying too. But this is just extra security to ensure that it doesn't. And it looks so nice. It just looks lovely. So for simplicity's sake, and because I have no idea how I'm going to put my box together, or I know how I'm going to put them together, I don't know what order, I'm just putting the same stitch over all my seams. It's going to do the job, it's going to hold this nicely, it's a little bit decorative, not massively so, but it is a little bit decorative, it looks really nice, and it's just going to hold everything here nice and securely for me. So down this one, nearly at the end, get my button ready, and just lock that one. You may well have, lots of us have machines with buttons that we don't know what they do. These three that I'm using are very useful. This one with the light on is the needle drop, and that basically means that when I stop stitching, the needle stays in the fabric. This one here with the little dot on is a lock stitch, so when I press that, the machine stitches on the spot and locks. And then this one here is a cutter, a thread cutter, so when I press that, the machine cuts the thread, and 9 times out of 10, the thread cutter both works to cut the thread and also keeps the thread, so you can just start again straight away. It's a good one on this machine. On some machines, they can be a bit naughty unthreading the thread, but this one does a pretty good job. And I'm just going to speed that up a bit now. Sort of know what I'm doing. I've had it slower because I was free motion stitching and I was doing a pattern, which I'll show you in a minute. Just whiz down here. Got to be patient, there's no point ripping this through fast, just let it take its time. If I spaced it further apart, it would have done quicker, but then less strong. I've gone for a nice strong option because I know there's going to be a dog near this, so it needs to be tough. And this does come out working like that, like this. It just comes out so beautifully flat and accurate. I think, quite apart from the accuracy that you need when piecing, never just comes out quite completely flat. It can't, because there's turned seams underneath. Whereas this, basically, the seams are completely flat, and I just find that very, very pleasing. Right, so again, I'm holding it there to double stitch, and then I'm going down this middle line. All the time, one of the things I'm watching out for is to make sure that these fabrics are nicely put together. They should be, because they've been bonded like this. But sometimes you haven't ironed it well enough, or sometimes the heat and bond just loses its thing, and it isn't a permanent adhesive, nor is Bond-A-Web. They are only semi-permanent. So you may find bits where it's like here, where it's pulling apart a bit. So I'm just making sure with my fingers that I keep that nicely butted up so that I stitch this exactly where I want it. And keeping that middle line on the seam and just making sure my seams stay together. And I'm making this in small squares. There's no reason why, if you're quite happy with a bigger piece under the machine, you can't make a whole quilt like this and lay it out on top, bond it down and overstitch your seams. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. You don't have to piece the whole quilt. You could do it all like this and then stitch over the seams, but on a big piece. I'll explain what I mean in a minute. I'm having to shout above the sewing machine at the moment. Okay, it didn't take very long at all, does it, for one block? I think 2 hours is a massive overestimate. I think if I got on with it, I could probably get all these blocks done in an hour. So cut that. So now I have my nice block all stitched down these seams. Really, it looks really neat. It looks beautifully neat on the back as well. It's very, very firm and it's beautifully flat. And as I say, if you wanted to, you could lay out a whole, you know, this is going to be about 4x4 foot, 3x3 foot. I could have had a piece of felt that size and laid out my pieces in any, so that'd be quite an interesting thing to do, wouldn't it? Maybe we'll do that with the scraps. Maybe with the scraps we'll make quite a big scrappy quilt. Maybe we'll make a 3x3. Maybe we'll make another throw. Fancy that idea. With the scraps we could make, show you how you can make something bigger and very spontaneous and still just go back in and overstitch the seams. The only difference is I'm overstitching the seams instead of piecing them, which just gives me this really nice stable flat piece. And I will end up with lots of these. And I will then be able to lay them out. I will trim them to size, lay them out, decide how I want them to be. And then down these seams, actually what I'll probably do, I probably won't triple stitch, I'll probably use this same stitch again, because then it's going to match in with the other stitches. And when it's done, you really won't know where the blocks were, except that the back is going to have patterns on. But it looks really good. It's a kind of version of, I suppose, I mean, I just made it up when I was I made a huge quilt called Vintage Flora, which is about 8 foot tall by, in fact, it's about 9 foot tall by 4 foot wide. And it's made up of patches like this, which have actually got, that'd be another nice project for us to do, hand-painted vintage flowers on them. And I knew I didn't want to have to try and handle that. I didn't even at that point have a machine with a slightly wider bit. I just had I had a Benina, which was beautiful, but very small throat plate. I knew I didn't want to manhandle it through there. So I decided I would make the blocks, and as ever, I just made this up. I kind of thought I'll make each block separately, and I left enough space on the edge of those blocks so that when I butted them up, there was a gap between these centre panels that I then applied sashing on top and did. I'll get this quilt out to show you sometime. And it worked really well. It made this huge quilt. You would never guess looking at it that it wasn't made as one big piece, but it really wasn't. And it means that I can stitch all these panels separately. So that's the next thing that I want to do here, is I want to put, you could just stitch it like this. This is so stable on the felt. I don't think it would be going anywhere. But I quite like to, because I like stitching, put more pattern on here. So I've started... Let me find, I've got one that I've started doing so that I could show you. It's almost bound to be at the bottom of a part. There it is. Hang on, girls, boys, people, peeps. Right. So you can't see a massive difference. I know you can't, but this is stitched. If you look, I've been stitching a pattern on it. And I got the pattern from, let's find one where you can see it. There's lots of different ways you can find a pattern for quilting. This one, I saw this on here, which is one of these stencils on the back, and I thought, ooh, that could make a nice quilting pattern. Now, when I say quilting, I do not... Do I always use felt in quilts as well as hangings? Well, Sherry, I am doing this time. I did look at waddings, and to be honest with you, In fact, I'm going to move you for a minute, girls, so that I can actually see your questions for a bit, because we'll come back over there when I'm machining again. Let's just pop you back over there, because it's better I can see your questions. Let's just turn that. What I find is, I looked at the waddings and I considered using wadding because this is going to be a quilt, but when I looked at them, I thought, let me show you some of them. I've got a few here. Don't know where the others have gone. I piled them. That one's a blanket. That's black. Is that some? Hang on. This is the wadding that I used to use most often, which is a cotton wadding. This is actually eco soy plus cotton. I could have used this and cut the squares out of this, but I just think when I look at that and I look at my felt and how flat and stable the felt is, I didn't really feel like using that. It didn't tempt me. I just knew I would rather use the felt. This has, you know, quite a lot of stretch and pull in it. This is just, it's more stable. It's more stable. And there's no reason why not. It's not wool felt, so it's not going to shrink. It's an acrylic, no, it's a viscose. It's a viscose and wool felt. So it's soft but washable and it won't shrink. So it actually makes a very nice basis and it's going to make a very nice throw. If you wanted to use wadding, if the wadding feels softer to you, go for that. So there's lots of ways you could quilt this. And when I say quilt, I just mean stitch. I'm not going for quilting patterns that, you know, never cross each other and the lines never touch, and I'm not going for any of that. I'm not going for even stitching. I'm just going for patterns. Let me get a pen to draw these so you can actually see. So a classic, you know, I mean, here's my block. My blocks are all in kind of rectangles, aren't they? So if we had a rectangle like that, let's have a look. How does my block go? I've got a line there and 1, 2. This isn't very accurate. That's about what I'd expect from me, not very accurate. But it's more or less actually like that. And I could just, I've got seams down all these lines, haven't I? I've got seams down all here, holding it. Now I could very simply just leave the same presser foot on and just carry on putting those seams in. So I could put them all the way down here. And I could carry on and put them, let's put them all the way up there. And then where would I like to go? I think I would like to go across this one. And then because it's me, I'd like to change that one. And I think that looks really nice. And then, so let's go that way on that and that way on that. And all I've done is I've just changed the directions. And I could do that with the patterned foot, or I could just put it into straight stitch and do it with the straight stitch foot. And the, it actually looks lovely, that. Kind of wish I'd done that. And the straight stitch foot, maybe I'll do that on another one. That's the joy of it, isn't it? Because then you just want to keep going. So there's my seams stitched with a heavier stitch, and then these could be lighter stitches in between, or they could be exactly the same as my stitches. Doesn't matter. Draw out your block and have a bit of a think of it. Another classic way, let's draw the block again, is, so I've got my lines down here, whatever my stitch is. So we know those we've got stitched and held. So we've already got decorative stitching along here. Would be stipple stitching, which is basically just a meandering line which goes around and holds all those fabrics together nice and firmly without being anything in particular. Now, if you like stipple stitch, it's a good choice. I absolutely hate it. You can see even with a pen, I'm finding it hard to get it. It's not bad, but it's not really my forte. I have to say, it's not really my forte. It'd be a good way of filling it and a way a lot of quilters would do this. So they would do stipple stitch in each of these and hold it with the decorative borders. That would be fine too. You could, it all depends how much time you want to spend on this. My quilt block is getting more and more distorted as I go along, but let's not worry about that. So those are our seams we've got done. You could just simply run straight stitch straight across the whole of it. No reason why not. And if you wanted to, you could come back and grid over all of that. That would look absolutely fine too. And all of these can be done, not the stipple, but with your ordinary foot on. You could anyway, so that's nothing like it now. It's changing every time, this block. But we could put, you know, if I did think about this, because on mine, can you see a lot of my blocks have this trellis in them. So I could have decided that I would put straight stitches, but I would grid the whole thing up in a trellis. I could have done it like that. Or I could use, draw it smaller up here, I could do the grids in the separate areas of the box. Or I might decide, well, let's do a diamond there, a diamond there, and let's do straight stitch 2 ways in that. So you can play around with this any way you like. I would strongly suggest you draw out, it doesn't matter whether you're getting this accurate or not, just draw out your block shape roughly, you know, if you, however you've got your patterns to come out, and just play with some ideas. There's a lot of you know, looking at what else is on here. I often look for clues in the patterns and things I've put on. So I've got the trellis. I've also had, if you remember, this lovely swirl. So what about that? So let's draw my block. And I've turned my block round now here. So I'm now drawing it a different way, which is quite interesting, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So I could, I've got my decorative seams in there. So I could follow this sort of curling pattern that I've got in the background, and I'm finding that quite hard, but I'm getting there, and I'd want to take those to the edges. I don't like that. So say I wanted to do that and I'm not liking it, I'm not getting what I want here, and I'm looking at this and the pattern on here does go like that, which is sort of dictating to me. What I'd really like to do, if I'm going to do that, is more like this. If I'm going to do that sort of stitch, I prefer to do it in a much sort of looser, more gestural way. So let's try that way on our block and see how that looks. This is thinking with a pencil again, or thinking with a pen in this case. Hi, Margaret. It is... Thinking with a pen is so useful, and not only does it save quite a lot of cock-ups, it can actually give you much better ideas than the ones you originally had, because you try things out and you think, actually, that looks gorgeous. So on here, my inkling is to start from this corner because that's where the biggest area is. So I would be working much more like this onto this block. I don't worry about going back over my lines. I consider them my lines. I've got a perfect right to go back over any of them that I want to. And by going back over them, it makes making these patterns, whoops, that was a bit of a balls up, wasn't it? It makes making these much easier. Ignore quilting rules. You know, they're not there for us. They're really not there for us. They don't matter. And you can take, you notice I'm taking my pen off and putting it back down. Hi, Elizabeth. And I know a lot of teachers will tell you, if you're going to make a quilting pattern, you've got to be able to do it without taking your pencil off because you don't want to keep moving your needle. Well, actually, I don't give a toss about moving my needle. If I need to move my needle to get what I want, I'll move my needle. It just seems much more sensible to me than compromising with a pattern I don't particularly want. So I could certainly have one like this. I like this. I always like this pattern. And I think that was an option that I did consider and very nearly went with, actually. Very nearly went with the curly one. And then I looked what else was on here. There's leaves. So I could do something a little bit like that. but put those leaves in. Hang on, that should be a lot bigger. Oh, never mind. It doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. The block's something like that. So you could do some patterns like this. Try drawing it first to see whether it's something that you can make work out. As I say, you can move your needle when you need to, but you do want to be able to make this. If you can't make it with a pen with any degree of comfort, you are going to struggle with a needle. I have found that to be very true. So I could have one like that and then come back up and start again here. And I seem to be finding this difficult this morning, and yet this is a pattern that I have put on quite a few quilts. I think it's the leaf, I don't seem to want to make the leaf, and it's probably because actually I've been quilting a very different pattern recently. So that could work very, very nicely. You can see how that could work very nicely. And what I've actually done isn't that far off that. I've just put different marks, which is a good thing because I'm struggling with leaf marks this morning. And where I'm putting down the pen is basically where I would put my, that's how I would move my machine to make the stitches. So I could carry on with that one. I just thought of another one that I could do. What was it? Let's draw the block and maybe it'll come back into my head. It was something to do with those leaves. So I was drawing away leaves, swirls and leaves. Leaves and swirls. And that's about, oh, I know what it was. Right. You can, some people really enjoy doing this, you could put writing on. So you might want to write, mine's about roses. So you might want to free machine roses all the way across this. Whoa, roses is a rotten letter, too many S's. Not undoable. And start again, and then it'll be quite nice to then reverse that upside down. It's getting easier as I do more of it. And I've just remembered that the word I had on my thing was actually Rosa, not roses, wouldn't it? So I could do Rosa. So if this was Alison, this would be her, because this is her new grandbaby. So we could put Rosa over it. So if this was Rosa's quilt, this would be lovely to quilt it all with her name. And it is just a case of practicing. Annabelle Rainbow did a lot of quilts, her life series, where she quilted loads and loads of words. And you can see it ends up just looking like a nice pattern. And you could move it, you could do this. What happens to me when I do this is I start feeling excited and I think I'm going to have to make more quilts because all of these could look really... No, because you don't really... I'm not going to quilt it in really bright colours. And it kind of... That's a very personal... It's a good question, Dorothy. You may feel that, but I find that the quilting tends to just... If I use quilting... You could use the lettering on your machine in the walking foot if you wanted to. To me, that's not as personal, but that's just a very, very personal view on it. So yes, you can use the digitized embroidery if you have it. I'm useless with it because it means learning how to use it. And I prefer my own handwriting in there, but you could do that. Or you could do it in each area like this. Oh, there's a rower, but we won't worry about that. I never worry about misspelling things. We'll try and get it right this time. And because this is it's just stitching, it actually, I'll show you what I've done on mine. And actually it just disappears. If I did it in a really bright colour, I don't tend to do it in really bright colours. If I did, it would show more. I'm using this stitching as just another layer of interest to look at. If you were worried about that, just do one of these. If you feel, no, I want the really, really dominant thing to be my beautiful patterns I've made, and that's fair enough. Just do some fairly straightforward stitching that holds it. Or if you're not going to wash this a lot, you don't need to stitch it. For me, I know it's going to get a lot of washing. I don't want it to start wrinkling up. So I'm going to use, I'm going to stitch mine quite heavily. I am going to use the same colour of threads, and that is what is going to keep it okay, darling, see you Wednesday, Janice. I'm going to use the same colour of thread, which is going to make it blend quite a lot. So the actual pattern I decided to use eventually, when I looked on the back of these and saw this, now there's several patterns on here that I could have picked up. Let's look at them. There's this seed head. You know, everybody loves a seed head, don't they? I could actually, because I've done it several times, actually stitched seed heads. And this is coming down to almost embroidering a pattern on top then, which I might be quite happy to do if I really wanted this pattern. Very Angie Lewin. Much loved, much copied, much done. So I could do that, and I can't see what happens down there, but we've got another one that comes out, and I could make that simpler by just putting one bobble on each of them if I wanted to, instead of putting loads on. You know, I could do that, and I could do a seed head pattern. What I saw that I liked was this ferny leaf, and I just thought a version of that where you've basically got there, and I'm going to be running back over my lines each time when I'm making this, but that's okay. I like doing that anyway, because it means if my machining's a bit dodgy, nobody notices, because all my lines are double at least. Good little trick, I think, anyway. And I'm not bothered about what a quilt judge thinks about this, and I strongly suggest that you don't bother about what a quilt judge thinks about it either, because this is something I'm making for my home. This is not something I'm making to get judged in a competition. So I liked that sort of pattern, and that is what I decided to do. So on here, if we look at the back, you can see I've been stitching that pattern. So all this blue is the pattern. And there's a lot of it, isn't there? And on the back, because the back's quite plain, it shows a lot. It really does show there. But I think it looks beautiful, and I think it just enhances the patterns that are there. And these didn't have masses on. On the front, I don't think it detracts from those patterns at all. It just, it's barely visible. It's just if you come in closer and look, if you're looking closer, there is more patterning on top of this. You can see the stitching here where it's on a different colour. This is still to be finished. And this kind of density of stitching is going to make this incredibly strong. So all of these are double lines that I've done and stitched over. So let's do some of that, show you how we do that. Let's get to the block we've just stitched. And let's do some of that. Okay, so I'm going to need my walking foot off. So I'll get that. I'll move. Oh, hang on. Of course, I've filled the camera table now. I will move the table round. Whoops! I'll move the. Oh, whoa! She blows. I'll move the table round. Let's bring you back over here so you can see. Bring that in there. There we go. Right. So before I start, I would have a good practice on a piece of paper until I felt comfy. So this is the shape of my block. I can just map out on here roughly what I'm going to do and get comfy with the shapes I'm going to be stitching and how they go. Okay, so I would do that first so that I know I feel comfy with this because I was stitching it yesterday, but I would just warm myself up and make sure that it's a shape I know where it's going to go and I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to have that sort of coming off like that, and then I'm going to have another one up here. And this is more or less what I've done on the other, and then another one up here. No, I don't like it going that way. I want it coming outwards. Coming outwards, and I'm going to have one here. And that's going to fill up most of my background. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just add from wherever looks good, perhaps off here, another branch here, which will fill that space. And then maybe here. Don't know where I'd do it from there. It's so easy there, is it? I think it would have to be just some small ones like this off these. Just to fill those spaces in. And that would get me a nice coverage right across. It's going to take me quite a while to stitch that, but that is going to very nicely cover my pattern. Now, in order to just guide me on here, I find it much easier to stitch with just a rough guideline in my head and no markings on the fabric. If you would prefer to have your markings on the fabric, feel free to go for markings on the fabric. That's absolutely fine. I'm just looking. I would like to stitch each of these so that this block is the kind of base. This is the biggest block, and I've got it higher. I've got it kind of in portrait orientation. And all I'm going to put on here so that I know where I'm going is the kind of the main branches. Now I'm just using, this is my Papermate Non-Stop, which I use for designing. And I find this the best thing for marking my fabric because I can mark fabric with this. Nice and visible, and I know it just rubs out really, really easily. So for me, this is better than chalk or iron out markers or any of those that I feel dubious about. This just does the job. So I can just put, I said I would put a stem out there. So I'm going to put that mark in. I put one up here. I'm going to put that mark in, and then I put one out here. And I'm going to put that mark in. And that for me is enough to get me going. So I now need to, if you want to mark it out more, you can, if you feel more comfortable, do this however you like working. If you want to mark the whole pattern on the top and then stitch into it, that's absolutely fine too. I find that more confusing than not having the pattern there. I'd rather, because I just don't hit the lines anyway. And then I start bothering that I'm not hitting the lines. So the first thing I need to do with this is get that off, which is the dual feed mechanism, and then just get the foot off and change back to my old darling foot. Get off. Get off. Oh, which, as ever, has got thread. There's thread everywhere. Right, so we'll just get this foot off. Everybody will have different ways of doing things. Some people like to mark out quilting patterns very heavily on their quilt, and you could use traditional quilting patterns on this. No reason why not. We're making a fairly traditional quilt in some ways. I don't, because I just don't. I never did use traditional quilting patterns. I found them very hard to do. I never want to just stitch one line. They're just not something that I want to do. But if there's something that you love and enjoy doing, get your clamshells or your feathers or whatever else you fancy doing, just choose your patterns and go for it. So far, up until now, I've just chosen really pretty simple options to keep this very simple. This pattern that I've chosen to quilt on it is a bit more complicated, but it's not for me because I stitch nature such a lot. This is actually quite an easy stitch for me. What isn't so easy is that needle this morning. It doesn't want to go through at all. Sometimes that can be, there's a bit of fluff in the needle. Sometimes it can be that I'm not even putting it in the hole. But I'm pretty sure I am. I think it's just hitting the hole. Let's just rub the needle. Try again. We're in. Are we in? We're in. There we go. So I'm just going to pull the bottom thread up. I've not got a lot left, but enough for a bit. I have to rethread that soon. I'll pull that up. I'm good to go. So I've got my free motion foot on. I'm going to drop my feed dogs. You don't have to, but I prefer to have mine down. I'm going to put this back into mode. Oh, it's put itself into mode 1 as soon as I put the free motion foot on. Oh, no, it hasn't. I turned the machine off, didn't I? So I'm back in mode 1, just straight stitch. I've got my piece that we've just done, and I'm going to start up the middle. So now I'm just going to turn the speed down a bit while I get used to this pattern. I've got my tension set on 3, which I know on this machine is about right for an even stitch above and below. I'm going to put my needle down again. Needle down, this drop needle, so that your needle stays in the fabric is really important with free motion. It stops it being so scary. It means that if it's all going wrong, tits up, everything's just messing, just take your foot off the pedal and it all stops. Everything stops and you can gather your thoughts and think, right, okay. The biggest thing we tend to do when we first start free machining is, you know, we're sitting there and it seems so terrifying and we just keep, excuse me how dirty my nails are, that's yesterday's dye and paint. We just keep going and you've got your hands kind of going through here and you just don't, just take your foot off the pedal, put needle drop on and it will just stop and hold there. And as I say, if you don't like free machining, you don't have to do that for this. So I've got my feed dogs down, so I am just going to get rid of that bit. That's just the starter thread there. I'll just get it out from under the needle. And I'm going to come up this stem. So I am now basically drawing on my fabric. It's up to me how fast or how slowly this moves. Check underneath, that feels, are my feed dogs really down? Yes, they are. It's kind of, I'm just going to check the tension because this is going to show on the back. This is so unusual for me to have to do this, but this is going to show on the back. So I want to make sure that the back tension is pretty much equal to the front tension. This is the Janome Memory Craft 6600, Margaret. It's now, unfortunately, obsolete. I've forgotten what the modern version is, but there is, they do an updated version of this. It costs a bit more than this one did, but it's still a very good machine, I believe. So this is the Memory Craft. It's I think it might be 900 now is the new version. I'm not sure, but this one's the MC 1200. It's a lovely Memory Craft 6600. It's a lovely machine. I just love it. So up to the top, my tension is okay. And then I'm just going to start making this pattern. Okay, so there's my, top. I just feel I could do with that a little bit slower while I get the hang of this. So I'm just going to slow it down a bit. I'm getting tangled up with the phone cable there. Right, so then down, I know this goes down, and this thing has branches. So we'll put some of these in. The longer ones have multiples on. And I'm doubling every stitch. So every part of this I make is double stitched. And I'm going to bring it out this side. And free motion stitching, I think, is one of those things, you know, the more you do, the easier it gets. It's like most things in life, and it's such a useful way of stitching. I wouldn't want to be without it now. This just feels like, this feels quite stiff. I'm just wondering how, it might be a different material out of the cotton on the back. It's not sliding. And also, hang on, I can see up here, I don't like that. That's not how the plant goes. The plant should be longer on the top. So I'm just, thanks Mal, I'm just going to bring up this bit because it should be longer in the middle. That's better. So we'll just add that in. So that's now got quadruple stitching. But if you look, well, I'll show you. We need to do a bit more so that we can look at the back. So I'm just going to keep going down this, adding in its branches. If I wanted to and needed to, I could have, and I'm just going to put another one in up here. I could have an image, I could have a drawing of this near me here so I could see what it does. Sometimes I do that to begin with. The pencil it's a Papermate non-stop. They're very cheap. Look on Amazon. I buy them in boxes of 10. They're brilliant for designing. And they are one of the few pencils where they really do, the rubber really does rub them back out again. You know, a lot of pencils with rubbers on the end are absolutely useless. They don't rub out anything. This actually does. And I find it brilliant for marking fabric. It always comes off. So let's carry on with this. I think they work out, I can't remember, but they're not expensive pencils. I'd be amazed if they're £1 each. And so a set of 10 of those will keep you going for a nice long time, and they're just really useful. Great for marking fabric, great for designing because they do rub out nicely if you want a rubby out pencil. And we'll just put a bit in there. And I'm just looking here to fill in this space. I'm thinking this is my nice ferny frondy thing. Yeah, fern would, a big frondy fern would have been nice up here. But this is my nice ferny frondy thing, so I'm just making it space out to try and fill this space. So we're going to put a nice long one in here. I'm missing in quite a lot of places with my stitching. It's not terrifically neat. My stitching is never terrifically neat. I don't do terrifically neat. Not in any part of my life do I do terrifically neat. So, oh shit. Now there you see, look girls. I've just, because I was getting, did you know what I was thinking? I was thinking this, I was thinking, God, I wouldn't mind serpentine. And I've managed to put a big stitch right out the side there. Now, as it happens, where that is, I can probably put a bit of frond over the top of it. What I'm not going to do is worry about it. I'm just going to lift the needle, put it back where I want it, which is over here. Now, one option, and I've done this quite a few times, would be to just cut that stitch out. It wouldn't come to any harm. It will all get held as I stitch over. So let's do that. Let's pretend that it's not in a place where it's going to be convenient to put a stem. So all I'm going to do is just cut that back and front. Leave the end for a minute so it doesn't come undone and carry on stitching. No, hang on, I've lost my thread up here. Okay. And you may think, oh gosh, it's all going to fall to pieces. Because I'm over stitching such a lot, it really isn't. It really isn't going to fall to pieces. I've managed to unthread my needle, but that's all. It won't fall to pieces. I'm not into unpicking or panicking or any of that. I'm just into getting on with it. The bit I like is the getting on with it. Getting, that's it. The rabbit's in the hole. The rabbit's in the hole. Right. So I'm just going to undo that. That didn't come off as smoothly as I'd hoped. But let's just put it on the back and carry on. And the overstitching will hold all of this. It won't be going anywhere. It's pretty tight anyway, because I do such a lot of stitching. Right, so in we go. Needle down. Let's go. So back onto here. And no doubt this pattern will probably change as I no, fine, thanks. As I go along. And it'll probably change from block to block. That wouldn't surprise me. And it'll change from day to day. But it's all going to look quite ferny. That bit of thread's still loose there. So we'll just have that set. Have that off. That doesn't matter. It's all going to look fine. I seem to have missed a bit out there, so we'll just pop up and put that in. It might have been because it was quite close to the other, but we'll pop a bit of something in there. I don't think we should just leave it out altogether. We'll go a bit further down so that you can we can show you. And I'm just going to put a little one in here in that gap, and then I can do another big one further down. Just put a small one in there, and then I've got room to get out here with another biggie. I'm just looking at the fern. Yep, I can take that out there. That looks okay. I've lost my thread. Where is it? There. So this machine has a, no, I can't remember what size the throat plate is. It could be 11 inches, which makes it very nice for stitching. I've got space to move my stuff around, but with a small block like this, the thing is it doesn't actually matter. This could have been, and was, as I say, when I did the other quilt on my Benina, and which has a small throat plate. Brilliant for dressmaking, not brilliant for making huge quilts, but it doesn't really matter with a 12-inch block. Even with a smaller throat plate, you're going to be fine. So down we go. So this is going to be a lovely combination, really, of both some guided stitching and some of the machine patterns, and then some really nice free motioning. So I think that's a perfect combination for a nice piece of stuff. And this dense stitching, and this is dense that I'm putting in here. I know I'm putting in dense stitching here, but this is really going to make this very, very tough, because everywhere I stitch is sort of double held, which means that my beloved little doggy can't pull it to pieces quite so much, which is, you know, kind of where I'm aiming. But it might last, you know, a week or two. Right, I think my bobbin just ran out. Okay. It has. This is so dense, the patterning on the back, that actually you can't see it on the back, but you can on the front. And you can see that. So I'm starting to build up this pattern here, which is going to look really, really, really nice. It's going to look particularly pretty on this because I've got quite a lot of lighter fabrics on here, and it's working with the patterns that are on here. I think it's kind of organic, so I mean, I could have picked up the Dahlia pattern or the Rosa pattern, you know, there's the words I said, I could have picked up that, but I'm liking that. On the back of this particular one, I haven't actually got into a space where you can see it yet. Let's do a little bit more just so that we do get into the space where we can see it. I want to see it, so I'm just going to thread up my bobbin. Normally I use bottom line on the bobbin, which is a 60 weight cotton, and really, really nice. Thank you. I don't know that I do have expertise. I suppose over the years I've done a lot, and I've learned things, and I've probably thrown most of them out the window now, but then, you know, things come back, and I think I get decent at things because I just do them, and I always have. I don't worry too much whether I'm doing it. Ramada girl, hello, Johanna, yes. Ah, those were the days, weren't they? Those were the days. It's been cancelled this year. That's really sad, Festival of Quilts. But the West Country Quilt Show is still on, everybody. So far, so good. I was talking to the organiser the other day. That is still going. And has some, I'll tell you about that another day, but has some fantastic galleries. So if you're pining for festival, you could make your way up to Bristol later in August. I think it's about 20th of August. And come to the West Country Show. It's a lovely show. But I'll tell you about that when I can actually see your faces. Let's put this on here. So this, yeah, normally I use bobbin. Normally I use bottom line in the bobbin. It's this stuff. It's another superior one like the King Tut. Very strong, 60 weight, so you get a lot on your bobbin, and it's a very fine one. I'm actually using Superior Threads So Fine, which is a top thread. Yeah, those days will come back. All those days will come back. This is a 50 weight top thread, so it's not quite as thin as the bottom line, but it actually means, because this is showing on the back, I didn't want just grey thread, so I've put in a blue. So let's just wind this bobbin. Let's get it started, trim. And on the top, I'm using King Tut thread, which is my favourite thread. It's a long staple cotton, which makes it very strong. The long staple just means that the cotton is made up of staples of fibre, and it just means those are long staples. The longer the staple, the less weak points there are on the thread. So it is just a really nice, strong thread, King Tut. It comes in beautiful colours. It's not the cheapest thread on the market, I'm afraid, but it does the job, and I find that's breaking threads, shredding threads, ugly threads, not ugly, but breaking and shredding threads just completely spoil any pleasure you might get out of this. So I would prefer two things I invest my money in mainly. Thread is one of them, paint's the other. Other things, my fabric's nice and it's nice, good, it's cheap fabric. The dyes are a relatively cheap way of doing things. The felt is actually very good. The felt is good, but compared with what probably is a bit more per metre than, I don't know actually, it's £13.50 a metre, but on the other hand, that metre is 72 inches wide. It probably is more than cheap wadding, but it makes a lot of difference. So come on, let's get some so that it's into this gap so that I can see what I'm doing here. So that's where that's where we ran out, wasn't it? Do like somebody called Ramada Girl. A good name. Right, so we just ran out there, didn't we? So let's just get back, plopped in there and stitch over that bit. It went a bit manky. So each time I'm going back over this stitching. None of this that quilting has to be one line. That's just, I think, a load of rubbish. And to be honest with you, I think it looks nicer for being two lines because it gives it more definition. I mean, I know I'm not being a purist here because that's not what I'm aiming for, but I just think this looks as nice, if not nicer, than a single thread. It's giving it much more emphasis. I think it looks lovely and it allows you to cover up a few botched up mistakes as well. So let's just come back up, got another branch here. Where do I want that one? Probably out a bit further. Oops, and I've missed. I don't worry about missing, I just keep going. I'm very impatient if I have to spend time unpicking and fussing, so I just keep going, and I found that over the years that just seems to work for me. Just keep at it and it'll be fine. A few botches, only God's perfect, isn't he, apparently? So a few botches don't worry me very much at all. I kind of wish they didn't happen, but I live with the fact they do. This is still feeling quite stiff. On some machines, and this is one, there is an adjustment for the pressure foot pressure, so I might just release the pressure a bit and see if this glides a bit more smoothly. Oh yes, it does. Well, there you go. That proves that that works then, doesn't it? Feels so funny to be just stitching through fabrics. Oh, no, I don't like that actually. I'm going to put that pressure back. I'm not liking it like that. Might be a bit loose. I just don't like the feel of it. That's better. And it's not a very even firm, this either, because I keep forgetting where I am on it as well. When I am completely forgetting whereabouts I am on it, I will stop the machine and have a good look. Like now. That's it. All right, I'm back on the middle bit of it again. Okay, which is the side it's going to show best? It's going to be this side, isn't it? I want us just to be able to see a little bit on the back before I go. So we'll do another big one over here. And because I'm doing this in one of the colours that's in the background anyway, this isn't going to be a massively noticeable thing. So I don't think, as Dorothy was mentioning, I don't think this stitching here... Oh, you can't even see, can you? Come on, shout at me, girls. Can you see? Yes, you can see. So I don't think this stitching here is spoiling this pattern. I think the pattern still shows. You see the stitching as sort of secondary. When you're looking at it, you think, oh, hang on, actually, there's another pattern in there. And I really like that. I think that gives the viewer something extra to look at. I say the viewer, this is going to be on the settee. It's not going to be viewed by anybody. I suppose I could enter this into contemporary quilting somewhere, but I wouldn't. Well, maybe I should. I know I'd get absolutely slam-dunkened by the judges because I'm not following any of the set rules. But every now and then I do quite like to do that, actually, just to shake things up a bit. So this would be quite an interesting one to put into contemporary quilts, wouldn't it? Because I mean, it is a classic piece of contemporary quilting in that it's taking the traditions of quilting, piecing, giving them a tweak, bonding, making my own fabric, and then basically machine quilting stroke machine embroidering over the top. So that's quite a nice mix, actually. It'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Maybe I'll enter it into the West Country show. I'll have to fight. I hope, and that's the thing, that's the thing. Just let me say that while I'm stitching here. The show is still on. So definitely get the entry forms and enter for a show like the West Country that is still going. It's quite a brave decision for them to make. And lovely for us for something to look forward to. Obviously, you're going to get refunded if it doesn't happen. Of course you are. But what they need at the moment is support. Otherwise, so that they feel it's just because it's quite a scary thing to keep going when you actually you're not 100% certain what's going to happen. So get the entry forms and get entering. All this stuff we're making. Let's get it entered. Get it entered into the show, because the competition quilts are such a lovely part. I'm going to enter this. Before I let Milo on it. I'll enter it in contemporary quilts and enjoy the judges' comments. And I'm sure I will enjoy the judges' comments as well. So yes, I'm going to do that. You all, I think, you see, if all of us that are watching, last thing, we had 16,000 views. Now, if all of you, admittedly, some of you, mostly in the UK, but okay, so if even 10% of those, that would be 1,600 people putting an entry for the show, what a difference that would make. What a fantastic show. I think Martin Corbett would actually have to start trying to find somewhere to put the extra stuff. Now, I'm just looking at that and checking the whole thing. I've got another one coming in, but I can see I haven't actually made this one quite long enough. This should be coming out further, so easily sorted. We'll just knit back up and extend it out. I obviously wasn't concentrating. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? And we've all got the time to make our competition entries now, and it's only the price of an entry ticket to enter the competitions, and you get the free entry. Yep, that would work, Dorothy, very much so. It would look lovely. Yeah, you could use those and outline those, work into them. That would work very nicely. Yeah, I mean, you could even, if you wanted to, when you've made the block, I mean, I've multiple printed so much, but say I decided I wanted to use this loopy one, I could get the stencil back out and actually use the stencil to mark a pattern on it, or I could reprint it on the top with the stencil to make a pattern that I'm going to quilt into. You can do anything. It's completely up to you. Just about all of them will work. At the end of the day, it can't really not work. It can just look different. That's what I always think. It might not look like I've expected, but that doesn't mean to say it's not right. So we'll just extend those so it's not so obvious that I got mixed up about the size of my leaf. That's a very peculiar frond I've made there, but never mind, we'll have a peculiar frond. We'll just pop a bit of peculiarness out there. Okay, so I'm actually going to cut there because I don't want to go back down that thing again, because I don't want to make it, you can still barely see it on the back, but you can see it's filling in these areas. This is the stitching coming up on the back, so it actually looks really pretty on the back, and it's blending in beautifully with the pattern that's going there. And on the front, I'm getting this lovely blue frondy thing, ferny thing, that's going to run through, well, over the whole thing, but it's going to look particularly pretty in these in the green and beige places, because you'll see the pattern a bit more. So let's just turn you around and see if there's any more questions. Stick you back up there. Oh, there you go, girls. So is there anything else that you need to know before you go and get stuck in and get piled in and make lovely, lovely, lovely things? Quite excited about next week making a scrappy one. I think it is, isn't it? I think it's going to look really nice. You know, imagine these. I've no idea how I'm actually going to, I haven't got in my head yet what pattern I'm going to make with this. I'm sort of thinking I might have these reversed, or I don't really know, but it doesn't matter. That's the nice thing. It doesn't matter. I know however I do it, this is going to work. This is just going to look gorgeous. In some ways, I can't wait to finish it. Yes, it would, Anne-Marie. This would be, and I mean, I could have used in here heat resistant wadding. So you could have used this for oven gloves. You could make a tablecloth that actually is heat resistant, so you can put hot stuff down in it and not burn things. Mats for the kitchen side, placemats. It would work for any of these. This is going to be fully washable and very, very tough. The amount of stitching I'm putting on it is going to make it very, very tough. Yes, it is. So you need these pieces backed. If you're working with me and making it this way, this is going to be the final back. So you need this backed with something you would like on your back. That said, if it all goes wrong and your back looks an absolute dog's dinner, we can sort that out too, because we can just put another backing on. And I've done that before as well. When the back's all gone wrong, I just thought, oh, sod it, and stuck another back on. So don't worry too much about that. Isn't it good news about the show? It would be fantastic. I really think it's such a brave decision, and I know it's something that worries the owner on a daily basis. I think it would be so good if we all just supported it. Buy a ticket if you haven't, so that he knows people are coming, and also enter something. Just enter something. There's loads of competition categories. There's embroidery categories. So there's contemporary embroidery, there's traditional embroidery, contemporary quilting, traditional quilting. There's art quilting. There's all sorts of categories. Alison, yes, now that's a good question. Colouring media and wax. No, it's not going to have any of these on, because this is going to be soft. Dorothy, I'm going to join them in much the same way that I've joined these, except that I'm not going to stick. And I will show you, we'll do a stream on this. What I'm basically going to do is when I finish stitching them, I'm going to trim them to size, and I'm going to then, look, there's two clean edges, butt those edges up together when they're trimmed. And I'm going to use either triple stitch, or I'll probably use the same stitch that I was using here, something fairly innocuous anyway, just to really strongly join those together, and it works beautifully. Now, if you wanted to do that and then add sashing on top, you could. I'll see what I feel like when I've joined mine, whether I want to. Colouring media, the only stuff you could use on these that would be washable, there are some things you can use. Neocolor one, no, sadly. Gelatos, no. All a bit tragic. You could use more paint on the top. You could use Markle oil sticks. They are permanent. If you're going to... it's going to look really nice, Dorothy. It works so, so, so well. Next stream, I'll bring you the vintage flora piece I've made. You wouldn't believe it's constructed like this. It's just so much easier because we can do small elements on the machine. You know, if I was trying to do this pattern on the whole quilt, it would be blowing my brain out trying to work out where I was going to put each little frond, because, you know, I'm doing it per thing. I just don't know how it would work out. Whereas like this, it's going to work out beautifully. You could use Markle, because that will, after a couple of days, that's permanent. The other thing you could use would be Inktense, which is apparently, once you've wet it, permanent and washable. And now I've never done that myself, so I can't speak for that. But I know people like Laura Kemshell and Linda Kemshell, they use Inktense. They wet it out, and I think that becomes washable. Oh, I know. The shows, so many people have been, so many shows have been cancelled here. So many. It's so sad. And I think those that are left and still trying to keep going just need the support. It is great for people with bad hands, for bad shoulders. If you don't like I just don't like the physicality of hauling a great big quilt round on the machine. I haven't got a long arm quilting machine, that I can roll it into. So it's just much, much easier. And it allows you to quilt and do, I could machine embroider these to within an inch of their lives if I wanted to. I could do beautiful embroidered flowers, whatever I like on these, because it's in a nice small format. And we will join it all at the end. And it could be anything you wanted to. You could make a bed quilt like this. No reason why not. It'll be washable, and it will be very strong. So we will carry on. I'm going to carry on with that and keep showing you updates on it. The next stream on it will be actually joining it at the end when I get to that point. So you can all just carry on, make your blocks up and start quilting them. Obviously, you can ask anything you want to ask about those. So carry on with those. You don't have to make it this size. Even just 4 of these would make a nice size table centre, wouldn't it, to put on your table? smaller ones, if I'd done these about 8-inch, 4 of these would make an absolutely beautiful big cushion or something. So use them for whatever you want to use them for. One of these bound fabulous table mats. If I was going to use them as table mats, I must admit in our house, I don't know what I'd do actually. No, because they're washable. They'd be fine, wouldn't they? So enjoy doing those. I think next time, the next stream, I think we might use some of the scraps. Have a look at, because I've got a huge pile of scraps going on here. So I think we could use some of the scraps and see what we can do with those. And as ever with me, I don't particularly want to plan what I'm doing with them. I'd much prefer to get them out on the day, look at them and think, oh, I think. So let's make the next stream, maybe the next couple of streams, using up the bits we've got left over, so that we're not wasting anything. I think that would be lovely. And then after that, I think we'll start doing some sort of journals, which we will incorporate all sorts of techniques into. So we can play with the jelly plate, we can play with printing, we can play with stamps, we can play with blocks, we can play with stencils, we can play with all sorts of things. Okay, my lovelies, so stay safe, everybody. I hope the weather's nice where you are. It's beautiful here. Get outside, get some fresh air. If you've got a garden, go and sit in it and enjoy it. If you haven't, sit on your front doorstep. I can remember doing that at my nan's, sitting on the front doorstep, getting the sunshine, and get making. You know, get making, get involved, get making. This makes time pass really fast. It really does. And I will see you, I've lost track. Is it Saturday today? Saturday today, isn't it? So I will see you on Wednesday, and Wednesday will be scrappy day. So you need to, by Wednesday, you need to have at least got these cut out so that you've got your scraps to play with. You're more than welcome, everybody. I will, some of you I will see on Monday for your Make It Personal. For the rest of you, I will see you on Wednesday. Go off, enjoy yourselves. Have a lovely Easter. Easter without the eggs, without the family, without the visits. But, you know, hey, there you go. Journal about that. Journal about how odd it is. Because this is the only time this is going to happen. I truly believe this. This isn't going to happen again. You know, whatever comes out of this, this won't be happening again. So, my lovelies, I'll see you all soon. Take care of yourselves. Stay well. Stay happy. Bye now. Bye.